Rolands Urbans is a clinical and emergency psychologist, trainer, consultant, and author. His expertise is grounded in his studies of psychology in Vienna and Dublin, and his experience working with young people at the margins of society. Roland is also the executive director of the Foundation for Shamanic Studies here in Europe, and his main research interests include shamanism and science, traces of European shamanism, as well as change and transformation. My name is Georgs Rubenis, and this is Spiritual Practices, How to Find the Right One. Discussions and talks with persons about our choices, gradually becoming more authentic human beings. Well, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, glad that you are here.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation and
Yeah.
for having me, yes.
Yeah. Can you tell a little bit about your background, as well as what was the way how you find shamanism interesting for yourself?
Basically, the first thing probably that is relevant is that I was just brought up in the usual way as it is usual in our society. So for one, I went through all those stages in life, including I did study, as you said, psychology is where I have my degree in, but I studied many things actually parallel, because I always wanted to know. So I'm a very curious person, and university for me was an intellectual playground. So why I'm saying this is because I know about our societies and the ways of our societies, and I had the possibility to develop a very critical mind. And that was a good starting point, or a good foundation actually, to get in touch with shamanism, which was not deliberate. So I did not search for it, I was no believer, I had no mission in spiritual ways, but I just stumbled over it, so to say, and I talked to various persons, read books, etc., and got more and more curious. And somewhere then I just started to get really interested. And what I found out then when I started with my practice, because that's what shamanism is about. This is not about necessarily not about reading books or talking about it, but about practicing. And what I found out when I started practicing was a totally different worldview. So I was educated in a, as I said, conventional sense, scientifically oriented, where we know about the material universe, the physical universe, and that was it. And then when I encountered shamanism, my worldview was, for one, dramatically widened and enriched, I have to say, and on the other side, my old worldview was turned upside down. And as a curious person, that I am, this was pretty, not only challenging, but it was pretty cool, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of your field works also is a change and transformation. And basically those are very rare occasions when people are willingly changing or transforming just like that, with no big reason. Yeah. Could you a little bit emphasize on this? What was your big reason behind your own transformation?
Do you mean the personal one?
Yeah.
There was no reason. I didn't call for it. No, I didn't call for it. I didn't search for it. There was no reason in my life. You know, I was actually a happy person, and I was fully satisfied. I didn't have a crisis, at least not at that stage. So in a way, still, there was that call, wherever it came from. So I really was confronted in my daily life with shamanism all over again. And first I tried to ignore it. But then, so to say, those hints and the encounters with persons and being confronted with shamanism as such, it grew bigger and more. And then at a certain stage I said to myself, okay, if this is entering my life in such a regular way, then I will actively check out what this whole thing about shamanism is about. So there was no crisis behind, and the transformation that followed was also one that was painful at stages, but not really. It was this process of my worldview being transformed was actually, as I said, an enriching one, totally. So it was, retrospectively speaking, it was a very a beautiful thing to encounter shamanism, and there is not one single moment that I would like to miss, actually. Even though it turned my worldview upside down, and also it changed quite a lot of things in my life.
Yeah. There's this term used actually quite often, shamanic disease. And you also mentioned this call that you felt, yeah, that there's some sort of call. What was the things that led you to distinguish whether this call is to some extent true, or is just, who knows, maybe just an awkward situation that's happening again and again and again?
So I think that there is not one way. And for me that's very important, because I love diversity and we're living in plural societies. And that means that not everyone is the same. And that also means, in terms of shamanism, that the calls are very different. And the call for indigenous shamans in shamanic cultures is a different one than for Europeans in the 21st century, or back then in the 20th century. And the classical shamanic disease is just one example of how the call can look like. And with me, it was not the disease as the onset. There were similar phenomena before, as well as there were other phenomena that I could not explain. So there were specific capacities that I have, and I didn't know where they come from. So I was talking to people, and I had information that I didn't know where it comes from. I said things where I didn't know where they come from, but they were to the point. It was exactly what the person's issue was about, those kind of things. And back then it was a miracle to me, which actually I became aware of it, especially during my youth. But I just took notice of it, and that's it. Retrospectively speaking, it totally makes sense. So now I know where this information came from, because this is a classical way of the spirits talking through you, if you want to put it that way. So that means the way started long before, but only specific circumstances in my life made it possible to let the spirits enter my life. And I guess it was, at that stage, obviously, a disease wasn't necessary, because I was kind of ready. You know, I was trained in my profession. I had a critical mind. I was full of power. I was exploring the world, and I was curious. So in a way, it was the right moment. And also, I had some losses in my family. And this whole melange probably made it possible for me to let the spirits enter. And also, as I said, I was just confronted with all the talk about shamanism. And in a way, I said, okay, now is the day to start.
Joe, you already slightly touched this difference between, let's say, indigenous shamanic traditions and the 21st century shamanic traditions, which are also available in Europe. But basically, some would wonder, why does the culture, who has been already established for centuries, need to revoke some ancient knowledges, some ancient talks with spirits in today's world?
Simply because we lost profound knowledge and significant knowledge about working with the spirits. That's the very reason. And if you want to find traces of shamanism in Europe, you will find many interesting things. The problem is that we have, through our life, you know, that's not an issue about who is to judge or who is to blame, but it's rather because of our way of life that we developed the last couple of 100 years. We just have lost the spiritual roots. When you research on European traditions, European spiritual traditions, you will find many practices and a lot of knowledge about spirits. And this is at the essence of shamanism. It is working with the spirits and with the power of spirits, and shamans are the masters of power of the spirits. So they master the work with spiritual power. And this is also what you can find in many European traditions. However, that got lost. And nowadays what you find is some remains of, practices, rituals, processions, etc. But mainly they are done for either folkloristic reasons, for touristic reasons, and not so much for spiritual reasons. So when you ask the people who perform those practices, which spirits are involved, and this is an essential question, most of them would probably not know the answer, right? So that means what we are left with is the form, but the essence is missing. In a way, those practices that we still know lack soul, right? And that's a bit the issue, and the shamanic cultures that still practice shamanism in their cultural environment, they have kept these traditions. They still sing the old sacred songs, they dance the old sacred dances, they do community-based rituals and ceremonies and all those kind of things in reference to the spirits, to the ancestry, and by that they reactivate old knowledge again and again and again. It's just, making sure that the tradition lives on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically you already start to speak about European shamanic traditions, and I know that your work is actually based on Mel Garden and his work. And if there is any differences among practices in shamanic tradition, as well as, let's say, for instance, spirits in this side of ocean and on that side of ocean?
Mm-hmm. If there are differences?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. I would say, well, yes and no, because, and here core shamanism comes into play, which we represent and also teach, because core shamanism tries to focus on the core aspects of shamanism, so on the transcultural and universal principles in shamanism. And these are more or less the same or similar in all the cultures, right? So when you reduce shamanism to the very core, you will end up with a few principles, and that is exactly what we try to teach, because it's not cultural based. It's not culture based. And on top of that, so to say, you have the natural and the cultural environments, and those influence shamanism, practical shamanism, very much. I just give you an example. If you're living in an area where there is a lot of sand, like desert areas, you wouldn't find a lot of work with herbs or with plants, right? On the other way around, where I'm living, it's rich in terms of vegetation, and it's a lot of green and hills and everything. So also many herbs. But for example, we don't have sand, so you won't find any sand rituals where I am. Also not traditionally. But you do in sub-Saharan countries, for example, in their traditions. So you see, the natural environment fundamentally influences shamanic practice. And this is also one of the reasons why the link to nature is so close, because it's the land where it all starts. It's not the method, it's the land where it all starts. And of course also the cultural traditions, because the cultures, they live in their land. they adapt to the land, and they adapt their ways, and they adapt the ways that are exactly suited or matched with the land, with the nature, and with their cultural ancestry. And that's why it is different here to there. It's not so much the core characteristics and the core principles of shamanic work, because they're pretty much the same everywhere, but it is really that natural and cultural environment that makes the difference.
Mm-hmm. Now that's an important aspect that you are mentioning, and also due to some of those differences, and also as in today's world, you can actually find out many different, let's say 100 or even thousands different content labeled as a shamanic or shaman tradition.
Yeah.
And there's also lots of misconceptions and misunderstanding. Yeah. But could you a little bit describe your organization's definition of shamanism, as well as what would be the best guides or milestones how to orientate in this very vast possibilities which are available today?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I start with us. The Foundation for Shamanic Study is dedicated to preserving, researching, and teaching shamanic knowledge. And that's our mission. So for one, we want to support shamanic cultures to preserve what is there, to keep the tradition upright, and also to enable shamans to carry on with the work and to give it to the younger generation. Secondly, we research. At the very beginning, actually Michael Hanna, who founded the organization, did research, anthropological research. He was a professor of anthropology, and since then we actually have been researching in the early stages fundamentally about shamanism as such, and nowadays in two aspects: fundamental research on issues of our time, and on the other side applied research. How can we utilize this knowledge that we research in practice actually? And the third aspect is that we teach core shamanism. And when you think about core shamanism, then it is based on those cultural, transcultural and universal principles, as I said already. And basically, what is it? And I think that's also good to understand and important to understand given the vastness of offers. Basically, shamans are spiritual specialists in working with the spirits, through altering their state of consciousness and through a very disciplined, precise collaboration with spiritual beings, with spirits. And they do that not for themselves. So it's not a self-experiential approach, but they do this because they want to serve others, especially their community where they're embedded in. So they are serving the community. And what they try to do is they try to maintain or regain balance in an individual, in a community. And that means they try to support others to balance their ways through working with the spirits in altered states of consciousness that they can facilitate very clearly. So in shamanism, it's not something that happens, but you know pretty well what to do. And of course, it is always difficult to tell who is serious and who is not. You cannot tell for sure, but there are certain indicators, I would say. If somebody is there for a long time, then that's an indicator for quality. Because if somebody supports the people he or she is working for on a high quality level, then he or she will stay. If it is just a promotion bubble, you know, then it will hype maybe, but it will soon be gone. Secondly, when somebody takes a lot of money, I would be very skeptical, And the third is, when somebody has guru-like tendencies, I would be very skeptical. So what we try to do is not what we try to do is to empower people actually, and we do not want to tell them what is right or wrong or what they should do. So whenever you, so if you're searching for gurus, you will be wrong at our address. That's what we clearly do not do, because we think and we are convinced that people know very well what they need, and we will make sure that they got the tools provided to get in touch with their spirit helpers by themselves, so they can learn everything they need from them. And also we do not tell them you have to do this and then this and then this and then this. So we have no curriculum, but we have a basic workshop where you are introduced into the basics of core shamanism, and then there are various advanced workshops, and you are the only person who can decide what you need next, right? So that means in this vast offer of shamanic offers, I would recommend all approaches that are empowering and that are not overpriced as such. But these, of course, are just a few indicators. You cannot really know for sure. And of course, a last point, reputation and mouth-to-mouth reputation. So if an offer has quality, people will talk about it. You will get to know about, not from an ad or from posts or social media campaigns, but you will hear it from people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is good that you're explaining this, and as we're living in a stereotypical world, so lots of people sometimes are asking those questions. So whether this or that is a religion, or this is a set of practices, or is this a philosophy, or what is it? And also, yeah, so in several cases when people are speaking about shamanism and also having those stereotypes, there are those memories from some movies when you know shamans are doing some sort of bloody rituals and sacrifices and all the things like that. Yeah. But taking into account this religion, set of practices or way of living or philosophy, so to your extent, what would be the best way how to describe shamanism?
In the early days, in the early core shamanic days, we said that it is a methodology, and that's still true. So it is a methodology to access spiritual knowledge and power. Why is that true? Because it is no religion. It can occur with religions, but it is no religion. It is a spiritual discipline, and that's a fundamental difference. At the same time, having said that, it is more than a methodology, especially when you put it into practice, because then it becomes part of your life, and it becomes a specific kind of viewing the world. So the worldview, the shamanic worldview, is what you would call animistic or spirited, of course. And that means it is much more than a methodology that I apply, right? So it's interconnected with my worldview, because you cannot do shamanism on a methodological level only. You have to accept that spirits are real, but not because you believe in it, because it is also no belief system. Shamanism is not a belief system. Shamanism is perfect for skeptical people who think critically, because it's not about belief but about experience. So it's an experience-based spiritual system that in the long run actually changes your worldview and enlarges your view on this world.
You already several times have mentioned the practices, and also that you practice also in your own way. So What does it mean in shamanic tradition? That means that there are some things that like anybody can do on daily basis, and so maybe you could also give some examples.
Of course. Well, I don't know about you, but when I get up in the morning, then I say to my loved ones, hello, good morning, how are you? And basically you can do the same with the spirits. So when you have a garden, or when you, I don't know, you take a walk or whatever, then it is actually most natural to greet also and tell them a good morning, all the other beings around, right, including the spirits. That is something that is done in all the shamanic cultures, and that's also something that we can do on a daily basis. You know, it's a matter of respect at the end of the day. That's a very simple thing. Another simple thing is that you just, as a practice, so to say, it's just that you take walks, for example, or you sit somewhere and you try to open up and perceive with all your senses open. With all your senses open, not only the visual sense, right? And then just try what you perceive. Try to find out what you perceive. And maybe there's more than what you usually perceive, right? This is also something that you can do on a daily basis. As in general, being in nature and opening up to the natural beings around is always one of the probably best roads to shamanism, because if you open up, then you will perceive things that you might not have seen otherwise, or that you might not have perceived otherwise. So these are very simple things. Of course, then there are more shamanically relevant practices in terms of the work. For example, when you doing singing, dancing, also working with the drum, that fosters the altering of states of consciousness, etc. This is all you can do to get a feel of it. But at the end of the day, if you ask me, then there is no way around getting trained profoundly. Because, as I said before, in shamanism it is about working with the spirits, and you should know which spirits you work with and which you don't work with. As in general, you should know the matter, you know, you should know what you're talking about, and this is only be done through experience, and of course also through proper training. You get the possibility to have experiences, but in a safe environment. So this is what for us is very important. We want to provide an environment that is safe and efficient at the same time, because we're not favoring approaches to the spirits where you are left alone with your experience, and sometimes the door is pushed open and you do not know what is happening. That's not our approach, but we proceed step by step in a safe manner, and the experiences so far are very convincing with that.
Mm-hmm. Several times you already have mentioned being in nature, and also nature, the part where this tradition or practice actually comes from. What would be your suggestion for shamanic practices for persons who are spending most of their time in cities?
Mm-hmm. Well, for one, go out and go to nature. That's one. But of course, we should not forget that also cities are, in a way, kind of nature, and we are nature. Because sometimes we think about nature in a very abstract way. I know people, they say, I go to nature, right? So they drive somewhere and then they take a walk and then they go to nature. What we tend to forget is also talking about the earth. We want to save the earth, etc. We are nature. We are the earth, so we are part of this ecosystem. And this differentiation between the natural environment where there is nothing, and on one hand, and on the other hand there is the city lifestyle, that doesn't work. But it's just, the question is, how can we call and invite spirits into our life? And this you can do in the middle of the forest, and you can do it in the city. In the middle of the forest, it is easier to open up because you have no distractions, or not so many distractions. In the city, you have to maybe define your space for spiritual work clearer. You will have to withdraw yourself, you will have to be in the flat, and you can either you have a room or you have a corner that you can dedicate for spiritual work, and there you can put whatever you feel like. You can put a candle on it, you can put an incense on it, and whatever. And then when the moment is right, you just burn the candle and the incense, focus, invite the spirits, open up and call them, and that's it. That's all you need to do. If the contact to the spirits is established, and if you're in contact with the spirits and you know how to do it and how to call them, then it's a very, very simple thing. It can be done anywhere in this world.
Mm-hmm. You are also doing work one-to-one with the persons in a shamanic way. Maybe, if possible, could you a little bit describe what are the issues or what are the topics that are being covered in such a sessions?
Everything. So there's, yes, everything. It can be physical conditions, it can be, existential questions, it can be spiritual difficulties, etc., etc. So there is no limitation in terms of topics or issues. Important to understand is that what we care for is not the biological aspect and not the psychological aspect, but the spiritual aspect. So we are taking care of the soul, of the spirit, of the being in question. Because that is the realm of shamanism. And when people come, usually in our society, it is because they are often hopeless or powerless, and in conditions like that. In shamanic cultures, it's different. In shamanic cultures, traditionally, the shaman is the first address when there's something wrong. In our society, that's not the case, because we have medical doctors, we have psychologists, psychotherapists, etc., etc. So it happens quite often that people come and tell me, I had it all. I did this and I did this and I did this, but in a way nothing helped. And then this would be a prototypical example of a client coming. But there are also other persons who have all various issues, physical, psychological, etc. And they come and then they want help and support. And also, of course, there are the curious ones who want to know, either because they have fundamental questions that they are faced with. For example, I'm in a transitional phase and totally disoriented, and how can I find my way again? Or also, quite some people come and say, I still have not figured out what is my role on earth. So what's the purpose of that all? And here actually also shamanism offers a very powerful tool, because you can so-called divine on those questions, so you can identify answers to that question. So you see, the scope is quite broad, and that means basically anybody can come, and that's also my experience. So I think it's a nice sample from society of the persons that come into my practice, at least.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and actually we are now here in a spiritual retreat center, Stacija, and we are in the middle of program that you are leading about, which is called a basic shamanic workshop. And I know that we have touched several topics already today and yesterday, but also for viewers, what would be your advice or suggestion to the persons who are interested into shamanic traditions?
Well, shamanism is always taking place in two realms, I would say. One is the ordinary reality that we all know. We're sitting here in ordinary reality, and that's what we do most of our lives. So that would be one of the starting points. If you want to know about shamanism, then get informed, right? Read books, watch documentaries, try to get in touch with persons who do shamanism, talk with them. Also maybe if you have an issue, go to a shamanic practitioner that you trust or that you get recommended from a trustful source. Go there and experience it as a client, for example, right? So first steps. If you want to experience shamanism in a holistic sense, then of course you need training, one way or the other. In shamanic cultures, again, that's different because usually the new shamans to come will be trained either by the old shamans and or by the spirits, and of course also a knowledge by community. Here it is different, we have a different story, so that's why we, for example, use the classical format in our society, which is workshops. And in these workshops we teach classical shamanic principles, and what we do is truly shamanism and nothing else. So this is what I would recommend, no matter where you do it. I'm not promoting our organization, but no matter what you do it, where you do it, take care that it is serious stuff, that it is professional and the like. And I'm not only talking about the contents, but also about the organization, you know. You can tell very quickly if an organization acts professionally or not. And I truly would recommend professional organizations, and the broader they are, the better. For example, we have about 35 faculty members, that's the way we call them, faculty members all over Europe in around 15, 16 or more countries. So it is not one person in one spot, but it is a large network. And I was just mentioning the faculty members, but we have many hundreds and thousands of participants all over the continent. So this is kind of an indicator. And another indicator is, as I said already, if somebody's there just for recently or for a long time already. In Europe we have been working and we have been teaching shamanism for 35 years already. This is something. The Foundation for Shamanic Studies in America has been founded in 1979. So you see, that's an indicator for at least a certain amount of quality, right?
Yeah. And finally, thinking from your own perspective as well, from your organization's perspective, what in today's world, what are the core issues that we need to solve, not specifically for individuals, but for community at large?
Yeah, I think that's quite evident nowadays. In the very beginning of our talk here, you said, where did your interest in change and transformation come from? But it was referred to my own personal situation. But in general, I have to come back to that because we try to address the issues of our time. That's what we do ongoingly. This is also why we do conferences biannually. So every 2 years we do conferences, and the last 3 that we did were on shamanism and ecology, shamanism and digitalization, and shamanism and transformation. And I think these are 3 of the biggest issues that we are facing. As in general, I do think that we are experiencing an epochal transformation where what we used to know as normality comes to an end. So you could name it as you want, but the Anthropocene is coming to an end, so it seems. And a new epoch is not there yet. So we're in between, in a phase of transition. So the old is not over yet and the new has not started. And this is a tricky period in every development. And here again, shamanism has, from my point of view, an important role to play for various reasons. For one, because we have an additional source of knowledge and power that we can tap on, right? which are the spirits. And it would be very unwise not to use every narrative of knowledge to tackle the challenges that we have ahead. So, in my point of view, we should use every narrative of knowledge available to find the solutions that we need, and we need solutions. And secondly, shamanism can contribute massively to the whole issue of change and transformation, because that's what shamans have been doing all the way through. Shamans are agents of change and transformation. So this is an important part of their work. They are accompanying individuals, communities through periods of transitions and transformation. This is one of the major tasks of a shaman. So they are experts in working with the power of transformation and experts in accompanying communities or individuals through transformational processes, which means maybe it's a good time to listen to the shamans again.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'm very much looking forward also for tomorrow when there's this third and last day of this workshop. And thank you, for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, so agents of transformation. Yeah, this I think is a very good conclusion. So what's shamanic work and what it's all about. And as we are at the moment, in this moment when the world is shifting, then it's good advice to listen to the people who are agents in this sacred area. Thank you, and let's see you next time.